This is the middle of February, live right here on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. And the man in the middle is Mr. College Basketball. That is Jon Rothstein, joining us here on this Thursday all across the SportsGrid network on behalf of FanDuel, of course, doing great work with CBS Sports as well. Now, Jon, you remind people at each and every stage of this college basketball season, you do not wait until March to consume this chaotic and beautiful sport. But there might be some people here in the week following the Super Bowl and the end of a football season that are now diving into college hoops for the first time this year. What is the number one thing, Jon, those people need to know about this 2023-24 college basketball campaign?
We have a chance to have a repeat national champion in Uconn for the first time since Billy Donovan won back-to-back national championships at Florida in 2006 and 2007. You have a team in Purdue that went through the biggest upset in the history of the NCAA tournament last year when it lost to Fairleigh Dickinson with the majority of its nucleus back that has a chance to truly bookend what would be a dramatic turnaround in approximately 365 days when you think about the loss to a team that could go to a Final Four for the first time in program history since 1980. And we have a team in the Mountain West, Utah State, that did not return a single point from last season, led by a first-year coach in Danny Sprinkle, that has a chance to win a conference regular season title in a year where the conference could get 6 of its 11 teams in the NCAA tournament, which would be a record. And it's also coinciding with the year of the Pac-12 in its final stages. Ben, it's not anarchy. It's just college basketball.
It is college basketball there, Jon, and also we're almost through. Let's just say 2 more weeks in the month of February. That first week of March, we're already ramping up for conference tournament action with some of the mid-majors. But before we get there, the SEC was sizzling last night, and that includes those Auburn Tigers' 101-61 win against South Carolina, who came into that game 21-3. Talk to us about that performance last night by Auburn, which was sensational.
Auburn at home is one of the most exciting teams in college basketball. And I think now when we think about the best home courts in the sport, you're obviously going to look at Cameron Indoor Stadium. You're going to look at Mackey Arena, where Purdue plays its home games. You're going to look at Hilton Coliseum, where Iowa State has made its own personal sanctuary. But I think you have to start talking about the jungle with what Bruce Pearl has created as one of the most electric home court advantages in the sport. That buzz is palpable, and it resonates off the television.
Jon knows the FanDuel odds. He saw Auburn as an 11.5-point home favorite last night, and that line should stand out, and it was the correct large line, snapping a 7-game win streak for the Gamecocks of South Carolina as well. Auburn, 9-3 in SEC play. South Carolina, now 9-3. Tennessee, not to be left out of the fold as well. Bud Walton Arena used to have a home floor advantage in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Not so much last night. The Vols go in to Fayetteville and knock off the Razorbacks 92-63. The Must Bus is at a halt this season, Jon, and Tennessee picks up a nearly 30-point road victory. What is the best thing this Volunteers team does under Rick Barnes?
Well, the backbone of Rick Barnes' teams, wherever he's been, has been consistent and a high-level defense. But you saw the scoreboard in the graphic right there, Ben. Even in a decisive win, Tennessee isn't just winning, but it's winning by scoring 92 points. Look, we might have a different feel about this Tennessee team in March if the score was 70-40 instead of 90-60. But really, the issue with Rick Barnes' teams in the NCAA tournament has been consistent scoring at a high level. This team is different. It was able to put up 92 points last night at Bud Walton Arena. I know that Eric Musselman is not having a vintage Eric Musselman season, but if you're good enough to go to Bud Walton and put up 92, if you're good enough to go to Rupp Arena and put up 103 like Tennessee did a couple of weeks ago at Kentucky, you are good enough to score the ball effectively enough to go to the Final Four for the first time in program history. But in the theme of Valentine's Day, be careful with Tennessee in your bracket. They've been known to break your heart.
There you go. If we take a look at the SEC standings right now, John, 3 teams in the SEC with 9 wins. That's the Alabama Crimson Tide, the Auburn Tigers, and the South Carolina Gamecocks. If we're taking a look here at the FanDuel Sportsbook, odds to win the regular season here in the SEC, it's Alabama at a plus 130 price, Auburn at a plus 200 price, and Tennessee at plus 240. How does this play out down the stretch in your mind in the SEC?
Tennessee has an incredibly difficult stretch to end the season. Now, with that said, when you have a stretch that difficult, while it may inhibit Tennessee from winning an SEC regular season title, that could also put the Vols in position to accumulate enough quad one victories where it could be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament for the first time in program history as well. That is another storyline to monitor. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. Obviously, Auburn is going to have to hold serve against Kentucky. I think, though, it's going to come down to Alabama, Auburn, or Tennessee.
No love for the Gamecocks. 18-1 for South Carolina, a 9-3 mark. John, we asked you about what Auburn was able to say last night with that 40-point win at home against the Gamecocks. But Lamont Paris, of course, has reinvigorated the South Carolina men's basketball program, a 7-game win streak entering last night. Was last night's result against Auburn on the Plains just a blip on the radar, or does it mean something more for South Carolina?
Well, look, South Carolina, and I was just going to retaliate, Ben, when you said no love at the Gamecocks, but I think we have an amicable relationship, so I don't want to throw blood in the water too early in the morning. But I will say this. South Carolina is playing like a Big Ten team in the SEC in terms of their ball security, in terms of the pace that they play at, and so on and so forth. It was a really tough matchup to go into the jungle and deal with Auburn last night, who plays the entire game when they're on their home floor like they're on a decline. South Carolina, to me, has been one of the great stories of this college basketball season. I think when you look right now at the race for National Coach of the Year, far and away, the top 2 candidates for the award are Dan Hurley and Lamont Paris. I think right now those 2 have separated themselves from everybody else. But beyond that, I still think you have to give the nod down the stretch to teams who have sat in the seat before. That is why now on February 15th, if you're asking me which programs do I think will be in the mix for an SEC regular season title, I still like Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee.
Let's get to some odds tonight in the Big Ten, talking about Mackey Arena in West Lafayette. That's the Purdue Boilermakers at home taking on Minnesota. Minnesota comes into this game 6-6 in the Big Ten. You take a look at Purdue, 11-2. Monster favorite here, 16.5 points currently at the FanDuel Sportsbook and a total at 146.5. Give us some pointers tonight between Minnesota and Purdue.
Well, I think if it's Purdue, you're starting to look right now at a team that wants to keep getting better for the home stretch. Now, we know about the known commodities on this team. Zach Edey, in the pole position to repeat as National Player of the Year. Braden Smith has made a quantum leap from his freshman to sophomore year, has become a better distributor, has become a better rebounder. He's made a real nice jump at point guard. Lance Jones has been somebody who has given Purdue something it didn't have on the wing last season. Guys, there's 2 things I want to point out now when you look at the other 2 spots on the floor for Purdue. Matt Painter has somebody who I believe will emerge into a Big Ten all-conference caliber player when Zach Edey leaves and Trey Kaufman-Renn. However, I don't like the makeup on the floor when Trey Kaufman-Renn and Zach Edey are on the floor together because I feel like it's playing 2 5-men together. When you watch the game tonight, look at the spacing for Purdue when Mason Gillis, one of college basketball's ultimate glue guys, is on the floor for Purdue at the 4 versus when Trey Kaufman-Renn is on the floor. That is one thing. And another thing I want to point out, because I've been studying his game closely since I was streaming their games when they were on a foreign tour last year in Germany during the summer. Miles Colvin is somebody who I think over the next month could emerge into a factor for Purdue. And Ben, I was going over my numbers this week. In games this year where Miles Colvin plays double-figure minutes, he's averaging just under 7 points per game at 6.9 PPG. This guy gives Purdue another athlete on the wing, somebody who can make a shot. And this is somebody, again, if this game gets broken open in the first 20 or 25 minutes, somebody that could play some extended time, give Purdue another shot maker on the perimeter to go alongside Fletcher Lawyer. I think this is a name of somebody who could really be a factor for Purdue moving forward. I don't know if the minutes are available in Purdue's rotation, but he's on the radar.
You see that 16.5 point spread. It should be simple for the Boilers at home tonight. They've won 8 straight to make it 9 in a row. But these are the things that John is pointing out right now that will ultimately determine how successful this season is for Matt Painter and Purdue, a team trying to reach the Final Four for the first time in more than 40 years. That was 1980. And, of course, trying to come back and have an answer to last season's disappointment at the end, being the second ever number 1 overall seed to be upset by a 16. Purdue now, John, favored with the best price at minus 9,000 to be on that one line once again in just over 4 weeks when the bracket is revealed on Selection Sunday. The defending national champs, Uconn, minus 6,000 as well, and then 2 other minus money prices. Houston at minus 500, Arizona at minus 280 to be 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. John, do you feel there are already teams that are locks to be on that one line come Selection Sunday in just over 4 weeks?
Purdue and Uconn are in great shape. You know, Ben, as you know, I release a bracket projection every single Friday. Purdue, Uconn, Houston, and Arizona are my 4 number 1 seeds as of today. But I want to point this out. If Marquette can beat Uconn on Saturday in Hartford, I would move Marquette to the 1 line and give the Big East a second number 1 seed. I think the Big East this year, you know, has tremendous volume in the league. I think we have 3 teams that have separated from the rest of the conference in Uconn, Marquette, and Creighton. And I don't know how much NCAA tournament representation the Big East is going to get in the NCAA tournament because we have so many teams close to the bubble. But I think you can make the case right now that the teams at the top of the Big East have the most national championship potential out of any other conference in the country when you look at Uconn and Marquette. I don't think there's a league in the sport that has 2 teams better than Uconn and Marquette right now.
On March 17th, we'll find out who those true number 1 overall seeds are. But in the meantime, we always like to keep the focus here on who can win the national championship. John, we take a look at the FanDuel Sportsbook, the leaders in the clubhouse right now. Odds-wise, Uconn plus 650, Purdue plus 650, followed by Houston at 9-1. How is this national championship picture shaping up for you?
Well, I think Marquette is a steal right there at plus 2,000. You're looking at a team, again, that has the majority of its nucleus back from last year's team that won the Big East regular season title, won the Big East tournament title, was a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament and didn't have its best day in the round of 32 against Michigan State. And you have a player in Tyler Kolek who over the last couple of weeks has reiterated his status as the best point guard in the sport, trending towards a guy who could be the Big East Player of the Year in back-to-back seasons. Marquette right now clearly on an upward trajectory.
20-1, that price on Shaka Smart's Golden Eagles. I think that is a team to watch very closely as we approach Selection Sunday. But we still have over 4 weeks to go at the high major level until we get there before we even dive into conference tournaments and the like into the month of March. This is only February 15th, and that is Jon Rothstein. John, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you for being here on this Thursday on the Early Line.
Thanks, Ben. We sleep in May.